Hello there, my very good friends. On today's wrestling news, Vince McMahon was backstage at last night's WWE Raw, and coincidentally, there were a bunch of last-minute changes. After that story, we're going to talk about the major backstage meetings that WWE held before Raw. From there, we have an update on Triple H's status in WWE following the Endeavor takeover, and then we're going to talk about the two NXT talents who have just been granted their release from the company. I'm Andy from What Culture, and this is the news. Also today, we're going to have the prize draw following our WrestleMania live stream. So stay tuned. That'll be between the second and third stories. If you donated via Super Chat, maybe you'll be lucky. Maybe you'll be a winner. Who knows? We'll find out. But let's kick this thing off by talking about the big story of the day, that being the Raw after WrestleMania not being great. Seems to be the consensus online. And Vince McMahon being at it and a bunch of last minute changes being made. So there's a bunch of stuff here to get through. Basically, WrestleVotes reported just before the show went on the air, stating, "I'm hearing that for the first time in months, tonight's show has a large Vince McMahon feel and presence to it. Big weekend for the boss continues." Interesting stuff. Even more interesting is this Fightful Select report stating that Vince was at the show. He was at gorilla position for the opening segment, which featured Triple H, of course, and there was a bunch of late changes to the show as well. Now, among the things that were changes were that two women's triple threat matches were cut from the episode, a tag team match was added, and Omos versus Elias, which was basically a squash, that was added as well. Bayley had originally been scheduled for the show accompanying Damage Control, but she was cut at the last minute. Damage Control, of course, faced Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez for tag title contendership and lost. And production, on top of this, were also given a bunch of different run sheets in the previous hour to this report coming out. So clearly some changes at play and Vince backstage. Now, Sean Ross Sapp on Fightful's review show as well commented it was rough. There were some talent very frustrated there. Vince McMahon was backstage and there were changes made, noting that there's going to be an upcoming report from his outlet Fightful covering the way things went basically with all of this. So there you go, Vince backstage. This kind of comes at within like 24 hours. Less than 24 hours, in fact, because it was the same day of him and Ari Emanuel of Endeavor jumping on CNBC and Vince saying, "No, I'm not going to be in the weeds creatively, but I am going to be involved in some high-level stuff," which should be enough to get any alarm bell ringing, no matter how faithful you are in these processes and stuff. And it would be very worrying for the average WWE fan who watches these shows and goes, "Hey, the Triple H era has been a lot of fun. I'm amongst that group for sure." We'll obviously see how this thing continues, but it's up to you whether or not you want to decide if the last minute changes suddenly being a thing again, having not really been a thing under Triple H, have re-emerged under Vince with him sitting at Gorilla. Is it down to him? Is he sticking his hand in? I mean, my personal opinion, and this hasn't been reported yet, of course, these whole things aren't necessarily tied together yet. Yeah, of course. You'd have to be wearing, I don't know, sunglasses that have had black paper like taped over the front of them to not see something like this creeping in. And I think it was quite evident from the moment this guy effectively held the company hostage to get back on the board of directors in January that something like this was going to happen. But hey, here we are. We'll wait for the next report to come out and we will cover that accordingly. Maybe that will be the link between Vince and these changes. Anyway, Raw in general, we're not going to cover the actual show itself on this video. We've got a what went down on the channel right now. If you want, just a run through of what happened, check that out. It's good stuff. Let's move over to the backstage meetings, pardon me, the WWE held prior to last night's Raw. There was a couple of them. And we've got the report here from Fightful Select. One of them was an all-employee meeting, noting that WWE stated basically that Endeavor, the new parent company, would not be involved in the creative and production processes. It's interesting because Endeavor chief Ari Emanuel had been on CNBC with Vince, like I mentioned earlier, and he said on that as well that he wouldn't be touching creative. So that's staying in WWE's house. WWE, of course, is set to effectively become a subsidiary. Endeavor have bought 51% of the shares They're going to form a new co, merging WWE and the UFC, but they will be ran as separate entities effectively. That's what we know so far. The new co has not yet been named. Now, this meeting was led by Nick Khan, Triple H, and Frank Riddick. Khan, of course, is going to be WWE president following the takeover merger thing. Triple H, meanwhile, is being retained as chief content officer, which we'll cover in a little bit. Now, on top of this meeting, WWE held another for talent prior to Raw starting. It was a couple of hours before Raw started. Some SmackDown talents and some Raw talents who weren't scheduled to be on the show were not at this meeting, but Fightful notes that many of these people were on a 10-day travel stretch, so yeah, let them go home, to be fair. And during this talent meeting, WWE touted WrestleMania 39's business success, stressed that things were not going to change under Endeavor as well. Khan and Triple H led this session and did not take questions. So there you go, details of the meeting. Now we're going to flip over and quickly do our WrestleMania live stream draw for the prizes. You can skip ahead if you're not interested in that kind of thing. Of course, we got the timestamps down below. But if you contributed a super chat, you're going to find out who won below and details of how to claim your prizes as well. Let's go to that. Hi everybody, we're going to do the prize draw for our WrestleMania 39 live stream. Thanks to all of you who tuned in, and thanks to all of you who got involved in the super chat. As me and Michael Hamflett outlined on the stream, we got some prizes. We're going to enter every single name who contributed via super chat into a random draw. I'm going to do that right now. The first prize is 2 shirts from our wonderful friends over at WrestlingVintage.com, and the second prize is 1 shirt. There's an example of what you can get, this wonderful Bam Bam Bigelow piece that I have on my wall right here. Tremendous stuff. And also, even if you didn't win, don't worry, we've still got our discount. Use the code WhatCulture for 15% off over at WrestlingVintage.com. But, as you can see, rather crudely, I have stuck every single donator's name onto a random wheel, and we're going to do the draw. So, probably should have got some funky music or something to go over this. But anyway, let's do the thing. So this will be second place, first of all. If your name comes up here, you've won 1 shirt. And it is Josh. Congratulations, Josh. I'll take you off the wheel for the next draw. And this is going to be the grand winner. 2 whole shirts. What are you going to do with those? Wear them, probably. I don't know. It is Justin Pouliot. I'm sorry, I butchered your name there, Justin. But basically, if you chaps could get in touch with me, andy.murray@futurenet.com, we will arrange your prizes. You pick your size, we have global shipping available, it's totally fine. You pick your designs, they're not just going to send you 2 random ones. And yeah, that's us. So Justin and Josh, get in touch with me, andy.murray@futurenet.com, and we'll take it from there. Cheers. There we are, we're back. Congratulations to the winners. But we're going to move on, continue with the news now, and talk about Triple H, an update on his future. Post-wrestling coming through with the Scoopski yesterday, noting that Paul Levesque will remain WWE's chief content executive following the takeover. So his status was, of course, a big question following all of this, because he's a very popular figure, particularly amongst the WWE fan base, Papa H and all of that stuff. And he's still going to have that role. I also think he got like a $5 million bonus to agree to this takeover transaction, whatever. So, tiny little payday for old Paul. He's doing well. I guess the coming weeks and months will be very interesting to see how that creative role evolves. Just because he has the job title doesn't necessarily mean his responsibilities might not change, or the balance of how things are done might not change a little bit. Look, calling a spade, Vince McMahon's fingerprints were all over that show last night. There was a bunch of stuff that he would be very fond of, or we'd assume he'd be very fond of. Thing like an Omas squash being added, and Brock Lesnar re-entering the main event scene, albeit not for the title, and all of that stuff. So definitely something to follow, something that a lot of people have feared for a long time, something the cynics among us, myself included, probably figured was a case of sooner rather than later, but here we are. Triple H is staying on. We just don't know how those roles are going to alter as things progress. But we're going to talk now about the 2 NXT stars who have requested and been granted their release. It's Rip Fowler and Jagger Reed. You might know them alternatively as Zach Gibson and James Drake. Almost forgot his surname there, like an idiot. The Grizzled Young Veterans, of course, recently they've been involved in the Schism, the Yayed down in NXT, that whole group. They were on the undercard, the kickoff show for Stand and Deliver this weekend, losing to Chase U and Tyler Bate. But Fightful Select was the first outlet to report that these chaps had requested their releases, and Dave Meltzer has since confirmed that they are gone. Now, there's no word on why they opted to do this. What's the thing? What do you call it? Where you can't work anywhere? Non-compete clauses. No word on the length of those as of yet. Typically, NXT talent, 30 days. You can't sign or compete elsewhere, so perhaps it will be that for them, but you never know. Sometimes they're a bit different, sometimes they're 90. That's typically just for main roster people. But GYV, very talented tag team, miscast horribly, I think, in the Schism. Yeah, it's not my favorite wrestling gimmick in the world, even though I think the people involved are very talented. Joe Gacy, Ava, and of course Drake and Gibson. But it'll be interesting to see what they do next. They're obviously very experienced. I believe they run their own wrestling school here in the UK, so that's an avenue for them as well. So yeah, best of luck to those guys. I think they will do better things, whatever's next, than they were in a gimmick that just didn't suit them. But yeah, they're gone from WWE now. And we're going to move on to our Twitter questions for the day. Thank you to everyone who sent them in. There's a couple of similar themes going on here, but Michael Morris has been on asking, do you think that people should stop getting excited about the Raw after Mania? None in recent years have lived up to the hype. So I'm not going to sit here and say people shouldn't be excited about them. I don't want to go, hey, you should hate more stuff. That's no way to go through life and indeed wrestling. But the past few years, if really going back to like WrestleMania 35 when they did that stuff with the bar in the main event and Lars Sullivan was the big surprise, and yeah, going back to then, it's not been a great show. It's not the show of old. It's not going to give you those big headline-making surprises. Yes, okay, we got a Brock Lesnar heel turn last night and we got a Matt Riddle return, but those are very tame compared to the fun and excitement that these shows used to bring as WWE's like grand reset, the start of a new season, if you will. So yeah, expectations have definitely been tempered. If you're still excited and still enjoy these shows, I'm not going to sit here and tell you you shouldn't. That would be absolutely miserable of me. But the shows, I don't think, are what they used to be. Personally, I don't look forward to them as much as before. And this one in particular, I had a lot of hope in Triple H kind of fixing them and making them amazing again, because look what he did with Raw is XXX. That was sensational, and we'd all given up hope on those Legends shows. Maybe he'd have done the same for the Raw after Mania. It just didn't happen, and maybe that was down to a certain 77-year-old psychopath who's just grown a comedy mustache to try and distract you from the fact that he has been accused of some absolutely awful things throughout his tenure. So there you go. That's my take on the Raw after Mania. Theo Edgehill and a bunch of people asked similar questions to this, so I've picked Theo's one here. Good morning, goated ones. Obviously talking about myself and this gentleman here, seeing as there's no one else in the studio right now. Now that Cody and Brock are feuding, who is Roman's next challenger? Yeah, it's a really tough one to pick out because there's not an obvious person, I don't think, at the moment. For me, the person who stands out the most is probably Seth Rollins. I know he's on a different brand to Roman, but that hasn't stopped them feuding cross-brand recently at all. Obviously, Rhea Ripley, a Raw wrestler, is now the SmackDown Women's Champion. Or is she going to move to SmackDown? Who knows? We'll find out soon. Whereas Cody Rhodes, a Raw wrestler, challenged Roman, a SmackDown wrestler, at WrestleMania. So they can do this. Look, Seth won at Mania. Gives him a bit of momentum, as WWE like to say. He took a victory lap on last night's Raw, just enjoying the whoa, all that stuff. They've done it before, obviously, but that feud felt like it had a little bit more gas left in the tank for me. The match in particular, I thought that the ring entrance with Seth doing his goofy dance to the Shield entrance theme was great. The first few minutes were great, and then it just kind of ended, and I was a bit let down. So I definitely think there's scope for a second act in there that's more compelling than the first. I think they would do good work together. I think they'd have a very good match. And yeah, no one else really jumps out. I'd like to see Gunther in that spot eventually, but not quite yet. But we'll see how it progresses. Still very curious about this decision to have Roman retain at Mania. Final question, bit of positivity to close the video, why the hell not, comes from the Dean of Misanthropology. There we go, I always get your name wrong. I got it right that time. What am I talking about? They ask, Andy, internet bollocks aside, what are you enjoying in wrestling right now? What's taking you to your happy place? Figured I'd float a warm, fuzzy, human interest question for you fine folks. I appreciate this because it feels like the past 24 hours have just been a cavalcade of nonsense. A piss tsunami, if you will. What am I enjoying at wrestling right now? I tell you what, I really enjoyed WrestleMania Night 1. I thought it was a great show with tons of great matches. And then Night 2 happened and they had great matches too, but then the other stuff happened. But Gunther's title reign, awesome. He's made the Intercontinental title feel great again. He's made it feel important, a work rate title, something to aspire to. I'm really adoring that right now. I'm adoring the Judgment Day in general and Rhea Ripley's arc and Dom being just a complete piece of trash. I'm enjoying that WWE are going overseas for more pay-per-views. We've got Puerto Rico, of course. That's coming up. Gonna have Bad Bunny on the card in a tag match probably with Rey Mysterio. We're coming to the UK again in July. King of the Ring's in the middle of that. We won't talk about that. Over in AEW, I'm enjoying a bunch of stuff as well. I think Dynamite's been pretty good recently. I feel buzzed about the show going into every single episode, and that's good. It's good to feel revitalized. Orange Cassidy's international title reign is sick. Low-key one of the best title reigns in that company's history. I think I'm really enjoying MJF at the top of the card and the stuff with all the pillars. I'm enjoying seeing my man, the Butcher, and the Blade on TV a little bit more often. Over in Japan, Tokyo Joshi Pro's killing it lately. Great promotion. You should check it out if you're a bit burned out on US wrestling in particular. And I've really enjoyed diving back into CMLL and Lucha in general this year as well. Their weekly show, it's free on YouTube. They've got several of them, but the Friday night show is free on YouTube every single week. If you want a completely different flavor, great place to check out. So yeah, there we go. Closing this on a bit of a positive after an eventful, chaotic few days, but thank you for joining me on this news video today. It's very much appreciated. You can like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell to show your support even further. You can follow us on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE, and you can follow me at Andy H. Murray. The H stands for Hoop 49, Cabin in the Hoop. That sounds very painful. Bye.